Chapter 2 A Merry Christmas. Jo was the first one up on Christmas morning. There were no stockings hanging at the fireplace. At first she was disappointed, but then she felt something under her pillow. She pulled out a pretty crimson-colored book. "Meg, wake up!" she cried, shaking her sister's shoulder. Meg woke to find a book under her pillow, too. Beth and Amy found books as well, and the four ran off to thank their mother. "Where is she?" asked Meg. Hannah, the family servant, who'd been with the Marches since Meg was born, told the girls that a young boy had come to the door begging for food, and that their mother had gone with him to see what his family needed. She'd be back soon, Meg told her sisters, so let's get everything ready. The gifts were collected and put in a basket. There were gloves from Meg, new slippers from Jo, embroidered handkerchiefs from Beth, and a bottle of cologne from Amy. The front door suddenly banged open, and the girls heard their mother come in. "There's Marmee! Hide the basket, quick!" cried Jo. The basket of gifts was hidden under the sofa, and the girls raced to the breakfast table. "Merry Christmas, Marmee!" the girls cried out. "Merry Christmas, my daughters," Mrs. March replied warmly. "But I have something to tell you before we sit down to breakfast. Not far from here is a poor woman with 6 children and a newborn baby. They have no firewood and must stay in one bed to keep from freezing. They have no food and are very hungry. Will you give them your breakfast as a Christmas present?" Though they were hungry themselves, the girls gathered up the breakfast feast and set out to bring the unfortunate family some food. When they arrived and saw the pitiful conditions, they worked together to build a fire with the wood Hannah carried, and set the food on the table for the poor children. Back home, the 4 sisters presented their mother with the basket of gifts. Beth played the family's old piano as her mother stared at the basket in surprise. Mrs. March was touched by the sweet presents from her daughters. The slippers and gloves were put on at once, and a handkerchief scented with cologne was slipped in her pocket. But she was especially proud of the thoughtful way her girls had helped the poor family that morning. The rest of the day was devoted to preparations for their Christmas dinner. But when Hannah called the family to the table, the biggest surprise of all was waiting for them. The sisters stared at one another in amazement. Sitting on the table were 5 big dishes of ice cream and a platter of cake and fruit. And in the center of the table were 4 bouquets of fresh flowers. Amy's eyes were wide with excitement. "Did fairies do this?" she asked. "It must have been Santa Claus," offered Beth. "Aunt March," Jo said, reminding them of their father's wealthy aunt. "No, it was Mother," Meg said knowingly. But Mrs. March shook her head. "You're all wrong," she said. "It's from our neighbor, Mr. Lawrence." "The Lawrence boy's grandfather," Meg exclaimed. "But we don't even know him." Mrs. March explained that Mr. Lawrence had heard about their helping the poor family at breakfast, and sent the treats over in honor of their good intentions. "I'll bet that boy put the idea in his grandfather's head," Jo said. "He's such a nice boy. I wish we could get to know him better." Mr. Lawrence and his grandson lived next door in a grand house, but the March girls barely knew them. Everyone said the grandfather kept the boy inside with his tutor, Mr. Brooke, and made him study all the time. "Our cat ran away once," Jo said, "and the boy brought her back. And I've talked with him a few times over the fence. He's really a nice boy. I'd like to get to know him better." "We all should. I think he's lonely. He needs some fun." Everyone agreed and talked about getting to know the Lawrence boy better as they ate their cake and ice cream. Christmas without presents turned out much better than expected.